My brother made fun of my job in front of everyone at Thanksgiving. My dad told me not to embarrass the family. My name is Alicia. I am 28 years old. To my family, that means I should have a real job by now. A real job, in their minds, is one where you wear a suit, have a badge, and a boss who can brag about you at dinner. I don't have any of that. I work alone in a small apartment with just a microphone and a laptop. But that's enough for me to earn a living, and somehow that makes my brother think I'm a disappointment. This year, Darian, my brother, walked into the house with a new girlfriend on his arm. He was smiling and asking polite questions like nothing had happened. Everyone kept glancing at me as if they were waiting for something funny. After a while, as he bragged about his numbers at work, his girlfriend finally turned to me and asked, "So, what do you do?" I opened my mouth to answer, but my dad cut me off and said, "Do not embarrass us tonight." The whole table laughed. My brother smirked and said, "Maybe lie this time so you don't sound so pathetic." I felt my face get hot while my family laughed at the life I had built. I just smiled and took a sip of my drink, feeling small. A few minutes later, his girlfriend pulled out her phone to show everyone her favorite podcast for long drives. She hit play, and suddenly my voice came out of the phone. She froze and stared at the screen, then at me. Suddenly, the laughter stopped, and everyone's faces turned pale. If your family ever laughs at your work, keep listening, because that night was the last time mine laughed at me without consequences. When I got back to my apartment that night, the silence felt heavier than the cold outside. I tossed my keys on the counter and just stood there, hearing my voice echo in my head from a few hours earlier. 1 second, my brother was laughing at me, and the next, his girlfriend was playing my podcast. She looked at me with wide eyes. My parents shifted in their seats. For the first time that night, nobody had anything funny to say. I didn't explain it. I just shrugged, said it sounded familiar, and watched the color drain from their faces. My brother quickly changed the subject like the house was on fire. Driving home, the streetlights streaked across the windshield, and every red light felt like a little insult I had swallowed over the years. My brother's name is Darian. He is 31 years old, works in corporate sales for an insurance company, and my parents talk about him like he's a movie star. My dad, Cashin, loves telling people about Darian's bonuses and promotions. My mom, Alicia, keeps little stories about his clients and important calls. I am the opposite. I dropped out of a safe business program, moved into a tiny apartment in Portland, and started recording stories in a closet with cheap foam panels. They call what I do messing around with a microphone. They say it like I am a child banging on pots and pans. What they don't know is that the channel Darian's girlfriend played at dinner, called Midnight Mirror, is mine. I have 2.3 million subscribers. I write and record stories about family problems, betrayal, and revenge. I use a calm voice and never say my real name. I am anonymous, a faceless avatar. This is how I pay my rent, my health insurance, and even my student loans. A couple of years ago, I tried to tell them I was proud when I hit my first 100,000 subscribers. I showed them analytics, sponsorship proposals, and emails from listeners saying my stories helped them feel less alone. My dad laughed and asked when I would get a real job instead of playing radio in my bedroom. My mom suggested I work at the local bank as a teller. Darian said, "Maybe put your podcast on your resume under hobbies." That was the night I decided they did not deserve to see the real me. So I stopped sharing anything real. At Thanksgiving, when my voice accidentally played through his girlfriend's phone, it was like the universe pulled back a curtain for them. They didn't understand fully, but they knew something didn't add up. They realized I was not as small as the box they kept trying to put me in. Standing in my dark kitchen with the fridge humming, I realized I was done waiting for them to understand. I could not make them respect me, but I could choose what they got to see. And maybe next time they heard my voice, they would understand what they had been laughing at all along. The days after Thanksgiving, I did something new. I went quiet on purpose. No texts asking if they got home safe. No little jokes in the group chat. When my mom sent a message about leftover turkey, I left it unread. I poured everything into the life they refused to see. My mornings in Portland always start the same. I wake up before the sun, make cheap coffee, and sit at my desk by the window with a notebook. The city is half asleep, and that is when the stories come easiest. I outline scripts, sketch characters, and read emails from listeners who want me to tell their stories. People write from all over the world. A woman whose sister stole her inheritance, a man whose parents refused to acknowledge his wife for 10 years, a kid whose uncle mocked his art until it was featured in a gallery. I change names and details, but the feelings are always real. Around 9 a.m., I step into my little recording corner, pull the microphone close, and turn strangers' pain into something bearable. Calm, measured, soothing. You would never guess that I once went home from Thanksgiving with my jaw so tight it gave me a headache. That week, in the middle of listener stories and sponsorship emails, I got an email with a subject that made me blink. Exclusive series proposal from Emberwave Audio. Emberwave is a big podcast company that puts their logo on billboards and subway ads. I read the email twice. They wanted to make a limited series with me under Midnight Mirror about family expectations and the cost of being disappointed. They had listened to one of my recent episodes about a girl whose parents mocked her career at a holiday dinner and said it was very popular. They wanted 10 episodes, mostly with creative control in my hands, and a payout that made my hands shake when I did the math. I stared at the screen, thinking about my dad complaining I didn't have a boss. If only he knew I was about to sign a contract with more zeros than his first salary. I wrote back and scheduled a video call for the next day. When the Zoom meeting started, my camera off and my avatar floating in the corner, the Emberwave team smiled. They called me by my channel name and said people loved my stories because listeners felt seen. They suggested the series be called Family Lines. I liked it. While talking about release dates and cross-promotion, I thought about my family table, my brother's smirk, and my dad's voice telling me not to embarrass them. They had just handed me the core idea for a whole series. Then my phone buzzed. Another email. From a brand I knew, a skincare company. The sender was Lyric Arden, Darian's new girlfriend. She loved my channel and wanted to talk about a collaboration for a New Year campaign about self-respect and not letting others define your worth. Lyric, who had played my podcast at Thanksgiving without knowing it was mine, now wanted to work with me. I leaned back and let that sink in. I typed back professional and neutral. No mention of Thanksgiving, no hint she had watched my parents laugh at me. The more I moved into the world that valued what I did, the smaller my parents' living room became in my memory. The silence from my family over the next 2 weeks was almost funny. They must have sensed my distance, but they did not ask why. My mom sent a few messages about Christmas, hinting I should come by. I answered politely short. I am not sure yet. Work is busy. My dad called once, hoping to talk about Thanksgiving casually. I let it go to voicemail. On the recording, he sounded annoyed but tried to cover it. He said, I shouldn't take jokes so seriously, and reminded me family is all you have. I deleted it and went back to editing a story about a girl who stopped going home for holidays because her family treated her like a failure. Sometimes I think the universe has a dark sense of humor. While my parents planned another perfect family gathering, I was recording the first episode of Family Lines, a story that started with a brother mocking his sister's job across a table full of food. I changed details to protect myself, but the story was real. Not petty, just the truth told calmly, released into a world that understood me better than my own family ever tried. When Emberwave uploaded the first episode, the response was immediate. Comments poured in from people who said they had lived the same scene in their own homes. I sat in my apartment, listening to the emails and comments come in. People thanked me for telling the truth in a calm voice. They said it made them feel brave enough to talk about their own families. I realized that the life I built in my tiny apartment, with my microphone and laptop, mattered more than the laughter I had faced at my parents' table. I started writing the next episodes of Family Lines with even more care. Each story reflected a small truth about being judged by family, being treated like a failure, and learning to value yourself even when the people closest to you don't understand. I worked early in the morning, late into the night. Every episode one recorded, I remembered that Thanksgiving dinner and the way my voice had suddenly made people stop laughing. The more I focused on my work, the stronger I felt. I knew that my parents and brother might never fully understand what I had built, but that did not matter anymore. I had built something bigger than their opinions. I had an audience that believed in me, that waited to hear my voice every week. I had a world where I mattered, not because of a badge, a suit, or a boss, but because of my own voice. The episode got shared on Reddit, and someone wrote about how nice it was to hear a narrator stop being the thankful but overlooked kid in their family. A lot of people started listening to my show after that. My listener numbers went up a lot, and I could see that people were really connecting with the stories. The skincare company sent me a message to talk the next week. I wasn't sure at first if it was real, but when I opened the email, I saw that they wanted to work with me. By that time, I had already made 3 more episodes of Family Lines. Each one talked more about how families can hurt people, even when they are saying they love them. They showed how love can sometimes come with rules, expectations, and pressure, and how that can be painful. Every episode made me think more about my own family and the times I felt small or ignored. When I had the call with Lyric, it started very professionally. She sounded happy and confident. Her voice was clear, and she smiled a little, even though I couldn't see it fully. She explained that their New Year campaign wanted to focus on helping people let go of shame and family rules that make them feel bad. They wanted a calm storyteller with a big audience, someone whose voice could make people feel safe and understood. They thought Midnight Mirror was perfect for that. I kept my camera off like usual. I didn't want anyone to know exactly who I was yet. I watched her little video square on my screen, saw her name under it, and remembered her smile over Thanksgiving. I remembered the way she had looked at me when my voice came out of her phone. She hadn't realized it then, not really. Now she was talking about how my stories helped people feel less alone in their families. It felt strange and nice at the same time. She said one episode hit her really hard. It was the Thanksgiving one. She remembered the part about a dad telling his daughter not to embarrass the family, and a brother telling her to lie. She said, "That one sounded so real it made my stomach hurt. For a moment, I forgot I was supposed to be secret. I almost laughed, but I swallowed it and kept my voice calm. I told her I wrote from both people's stories and my own experiences. I said that holidays are hard for a lot of people." She agreed quickly, and I could tell she had her own hurt stories. Her voice sounded softer when she said it, and I felt a little closer to her, even though we were just talking over a computer. We talked about new scripts and how I would narrate the videos. Lyric said she wanted my voice to guide the story, to tell the audience about real families and real feelings. At one point, she said, "My boyfriend's family can be a little intense, so I understand." She didn't say Darian's name, but I heard him in the tired sigh she made. I realized that she knew what it felt like to have family tension. It was strange to think that the girl who had watched my family make fun of me was now working on a campaign about the kind of hurt my show talks about every week. When the call ended, the contract made it real. I would write and narrate 3 videos for their campaign. They would pay me more for those 3 videos than my parents ever made in a year when I was a kid. Emberwave would share and promote the series and campaign. This was the kind of opportunity that people in my space only dreamed about. I signed the contract with a real pen, even though a digital signature would have been fine. I wanted to feel it in my hand. It made it feel official, like I had really arrived. In December, I hardly looked away from my laptop. I worked late into the night. My apartment got quiet and cozy, and my voice became a tool for work, not something people made fun of. I could read the scripts, record the lines, and hear my own voice helping people feel understood. Family Lines climbed the charts, and more people were listening every day. The skincare team sent me early versions of the videos with my narration over clips of people washing makeup off and writing things they wanted to let go of. They wrote things like shame, guilt, the need to please everyone, and fear of not being good enough. The first time I heard my voice say the word family over their logo, I thought of my dad telling me I was embarrassing them. It felt strange and powerful. My voice was helping people, and it was being heard, really heard, for the first time in a way that mattered. Then my phone buzzed. Another message from my mom. She asked if I would come for Christmas Eve. She said Darian and Lyric would be there. My first thought was to say no, to stay in my safe little apartment, eat takeout, and watch other people post about their perfect or not-so-perfect families. But part of me wanted to walk back into that house with my real life behind me. Not to show off, not to be mean, just to stop pretending I was still the failure they thought I was. I took a deep breath and texted back that I would come for dinner. The night of Christmas, the house looked exactly the same as I remembered. Same lights on the porch, same wreath on the door, same smell of ham, cinnamon, and pine. Darian was there, dressed nicely in a pressed shirt, holding a drink. Lyric stood next to him, a little more shy than I remembered. My mom rushed over with a bright smile. My dad patted my shoulder like he was doing me a favor just by touching me. They asked about traffic and the weather. Nobody said anything about Thanksgiving. Nobody mentioned the time my voice had filled the room from Lyric's phone. At the table, Darian went back to his usual self. He talked about his work, his sales numbers, and a possible promotion. My parents nodded and smiled, soaking up everything he said. At one point, he asked about my little online thing. My dad laughed and said, "Still playing radio up in Portland." But Lyric set her fork down very gently, and looked straight at me. "Actually," she said, "I have been meaning to thank you." Her voice was calm, clear, and strong. Even the TV seemed to quiet down. My mom frowned in confusion. Darian looked between us, unsure. Lyric went on. "Your voice has been saving my department this past month." My dad blinked and said, "What?" She reached into her bag, grabbed the remote, and switched the TV from a generic Christmas movie to a streaming app. She pulled up Emberwave's homepage. Right there on the front banner was the promo for Family Lines, with the Midnight Mirror logo and a tagline about breaking free from toxic expectations. She hit play, and my voice poured out of the speakers, calm and steady, saying the opening lines of the series. There was no way to pretend it wasn't me this time. My mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My dad stared at the TV like it had personally insulted him. Darian went pale, then red, then pale again. Lyric muted it after a few seconds. "My company has been running a huge campaign using Chloe's narration," she said. "Your channel is one of the biggest on Emberwave right now. Our New Year numbers are already better than last year because of your stories." My mom opened her mouth but closed it again. My dad finally said, "You mean that little show she does?" Lyric shook her head. "It is not a little show. It is a business." She looked at Darian, and there was something less lyric in her eyes than I had ever seen. "Did you know your sister reaches millions of people a week? Did you know the story she told about a family mocking their daughter at Thanksgiving went viral?" Darian stammered. I didn't realize it was that big." He tried to laugh, saying it was just internet stuff. I let him talk for a second, then I spoke. "My channel paid for this year's taxes, my retirement account, and the down payment on a future house." I said, "It paid for the student loans you told me were my problem alone. It is paying me more for one series than you made in your first 5 years at that company, Darian." The room went very quiet. I did not raise my voice. "I did not have to." My mom whispered, "Why did you not tell us?" I looked at her and saw panic and shame fighting behind her eyes. "Because the last time I tried, you laughed. You told me to get a real job. Dad called it while playing on the radio. Darian told me I could put it under hobbies on a resume. So I decided my work was not for you. It was for people who actually listened." My dad shifted in his chair. He started to say I was taking things too seriously. Lyric cut in before I could answer. She turned to Darian. "Is that how you talk about me when I am not around? Is that how you talk about my job?" Darian sputtered. "No, of course not. It's family, we just tease." Lyric stared at him, then looked back at the TV where Emberwave's logo glowed under my channel name. "My boss knows who Midnight Mirror is," she said quietly. "He told me getting this collaboration was the best thing I had done all quarter. Your company is trying to pitch a partnership to us next year. Do you understand how bad it looks that you sit here and laugh at the person we are building campaigns around?" Darian had no answer. My dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. My mom dabbed at the corner of her eye with a napkin. I felt a strange calm settle over me. This was not about revenge in the way they thought. I was not there to humiliate them. I was just finally letting reality have the floor. The rest of dinner went slowly under a thick blanket of awkward silence. Lyric barely touched her food. Darian made a couple of weak attempts at small talk that went nowhere. When the plates were cleared and my mom brought out dessert, Lyric stood up and said she needed some air. I followed her onto the porch. The cold hit my face like a wake-up slap. She crossed her arms and stared at the lights in the yard. "I am sorry," she said, "for what they said to you for not saying anything at Thanksgiving." I shrugged. "You did not owe me that," I said, even though a part of me had wanted someone, anyone at that table to speak up. She shook her head. "I should have. I knew something was off that night. The way they looked at you, the way Darian laughed. Listening to your episodes afterward just made it worse." We stood there for a minute, our breath fogging the cold air. Finally, she said, "I cannot be with someone who talks about people like that, especially when my entire job is about telling women that their worth is not defined by anyone else." I knew what she meant before she said it. A few minutes later, Darian came out to check on us. She ended it with a few steady, quiet sentences. She did not scream. She did not make a scene. It was calm, quiet, and final, but it was the clearest ending either of us had ever seen. She just told him that the way he acted toward me, toward my work, and even toward the special chances he had in life, was not something she wanted to live with. He tried to say it was because of how he grew up, or that some jokes went too far. But she did not change her mind. I watched him try to find the right words. And it hit me that he was finally feeling a little bit of what it's like when someone you care about doesn't take your feelings seriously. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not really. But I recognized the look on his face. A few weeks later, after the holidays, I heard from a friend we both knew that Darian's company did not move forward with a partnership they had been planning with Lyric's brand. Apparently, when the company asked Lyric if she trusted his team, she didn't give a good recommendation. He still had his job, but the promotion he had been talking about quietly disappeared. The company said it was because they were changing things, but everyone knew the real reason. The bosses wanted people who acted with good values, not people who hurt others at home. My dad never said anything about it. My mom never mentioned Lyric again. But the next time I released a new Family Lines episode on my channel, I noticed 2 new subscribers whose names looked a lot like Cashin and Alicia. A few months passed. I moved into a slightly bigger apartment with a real office instead of just a corner in my bedroom. The Emberwave series finished its first season and got picked up for a second one. The skincare campaign I worked on won an award for storytelling, and they asked me to help with the next one. I also started running small online workshops to teach other creators how to make anonymous brands and protect themselves while sharing stories that mattered. Sometimes Darian would text me. His messages were short and casual. "Hey, hope you are doing well. Do you have any advice for someone trying to build a personal brand? Think you could maybe introduce me to someone at Emberwave?" I always answered politely, but I never gave him what he really wanted. I told him there were plenty of free resources online. I suggested he start by listening more and talking less. I did not offer to help someone who had only ever made fun of me. My parents eventually sent a long email. My mom wrote most of it. She said they had listened to Family Lines. She said some episodes were hard to hear because they saw themselves in the parents who ignored their children's feelings and called them drama. She said sorry for calling my work a phase and for acting like love meant forcing me into a mold instead of supporting the real me. My dad added a short paragraph. He didn't say sorry, but he admitted he had been wrong about what counts as a real job. He said he was proud that I could support myself doing something I created. I read the message twice. It did not fix all the years of being laughed at. It did not erase Thanksgiving when my dad told me not to embarrass them. But it was something. I replied and said I appreciated their apology. I told them I was open to keeping in touch, but they had to understand that my life was not their project anymore. I would visit when I felt ready, not because I had to. I would share what I wanted, not what they demanded. They said they understood. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. What mattered was that I finally believed it myself. The strangest part was how many people heard my story without even knowing it was mine. Under every Family Lines episode, thousands of comments stacked up. People wrote about being laughed at for studying art, about being told their small businesses were just hobbies, about sitting at tables where everyone praised the kid with the office job and ignored the one who made something on their own. They thanked me for putting words to something they never could explain. I realized my revenge was never really about making my brother lose a girlfriend or a promotion. Those things just happened because of the choices he made when he thought there would be no consequences. What I wanted more than anything was to stop living as the ashamed version of myself they had made me feel like. I wanted my work to be real, not because they finally saw it, but because I did.